an important bearing in formulating the long-term substance abuse interventions in the region. Next slide. So the objectives, the specific objectives for the study was to determine the socio-demographic characteristics of the patients attending the clinic at the Jaramogi Oginga Odinga Teaching and Referral Hospital, to determine the drugs, specifically the opiates and other illicit substances commonly used by the patients attending the opiate de-addiction clinic at Jaramogi. Then we wanted to document the triggers for opiate use and addiction in these patients, and this one would inform the programs that would be appropriate towards the addiction. Then lastly, to evaluate the effectiveness of the interventions in the clinic so that we can see whether what is being done is working or not. Next slide. So the ethical consideration for this study, the authorization was from the Jaramogi Oginga Odinga ERC, which gave the authorization to conduct the study in the facility. So this was preceded by a review by the reviewers, the members of the committee who reviewed and gave the approval. So the site was the medication-assisted therapy clinic at Jaramogi Oginga Odinga Teaching and Referral Hospital. So this was a descriptive study with a target population-based survey of all the patients presenting at the MAT clinic of Jaramogi between November 2018 to May 2019. So it included all the patients who presented to the clinic who consented to participate in the study. So we designed a questionnaire using the WHO model questionnaire for substance abuse. That is what we modified. And in that questionnaire, we were looking at the socio-demographics, information on opiate utilization and other illicit drug use as the second section. Then we had information on medication-assisted therapy. Then the factors influencing substance abuse. So those were the core areas that we looked at as we undertook the survey. So we did descriptive statistical measures, and we used the t-test to evaluate the effectiveness of the interventions. So this is how the study was conducted. Given that this is a closed group, we used the same staff who work in the clinic to avoid any suspicion on the part of the patients. So these are some of the results that we obtained from that survey. In terms of demographics, I've just highlighted the key points. On the gender, the males were more. The total number of those who were surveyed was 61 patients. And this is actually the total number of those who are actively being followed up at the clinic. So 56 of them were male. Then you can note the age in years. Most of the patients were between the ages of 31 to 40 years of age. So that constituted 51% of the study participants. Then another thing to note is the period of substance abuse, which for most of the participants was more than 10 years. So this one tells us something, that despite the fact that we have the main age being between 30 to 40, it means that these individuals were initiated into drug misuse quite early in their lives. probably when they were around 20 years or below. So the younger age group was actually at risk even for the initiation. They reported in terms of marital status, they reported that they were married, a majority of them. So 29 of them, that was 48%, were actually married, living with their families. Next slide, please. In terms of employment, 70% reported having being engaged in some form of employment, and only 30% were unemployed, though most of these were in the informal sector. This slide has not included all the information, but most of them were either self-employed in businesses, some were border riders, some were doing other informal kinds of employment. Only around 2% were in the parastatal jobs. So most of this 70% is mainly informal employment. So the living arrangement for the participants, a majority of them reported to be living with their nuclear family. So this one is possibly the reason why they were able to come to the clinic and be retained into the program, basically because of the family support, which allowed them to access services and also to be retained in the service. Few of them reported living with friends. A majority were also living alone. You can see the 25%, but most of them were living with the nuclear families. The level of education was primary, as the highest level of education for majority of the participants, and only 3% reported being illiterate. So we can see that in terms of education, at least a majority of them had some formal education. 20% had gone up to the tertiary level. Then looking at the sources of this, most of the substances were from friends. You can only see that from the pharmacies, very few got their supplies from the pharmacy. But again, we are not sure where the friends were getting the substances for. So this is also a point that needs investigation. Next slide. Next slide, please. So the other aspects that we looked at were the estimated expenditures. So a majority of them were not using much. The most were spending less than 50,000 Kenya shillings. But this is still significant given that most of them were in the informal employment. So the places of residence is also a point to note. In Kisumu, Kisumu is divided into Kisumu East, the Kisumu West, and the Kisumu Central. Most of the participants were from Kisumu East. And looking closely at Kisumu East, most of these people were residing in the informal settlements, what we call the slums, mainly the Manyata area. So this is also a key area that needs to be looked at, the informal settlement as the main source of participants. Next slide. Next slide. Okay, then we looked at the substances abused and the frequency of abuse among the study participants. This was before the intervention. So this was the initial substances that were abused and their frequencies among the participants before intervention. Again, it is important to note that the key substances that were abused and their routes are as in the table. The benzodiazepine, especially the oral, was being abused by about 21 of the participants, giving us 34%. Then cannabis sativa, 54 of them reported this. This is 89% of the participants. Then heroin, 53% by smoking, and then 87% by smoking, and then 30% by injection. The percentages were gotten by taking the cumulative figures. Remember, for these study participants, there was poly drug use. So you might find a participant reporting injecting a drug, at the same time taking orals, and at the same time smoking. So as we did the analysis, we just took the total responses, like the 54, and then divided by the total number of participants, which was 61, to get the percentage in terms of the percentage used by the total number of participants. So most of the participants were reporting cannabis smoking, heroin smoking, and then oral benzodiazepine, and also injection heroin. So those were the main substances and the routes that were being used by the abusers. This is before the intervention. Next slide. Then we sought to evaluate the effectiveness of interventions at the opioid de-addiction clinic at Jaramogi. One thing to note is that the numbers were a bit limited, and though we are reporting like for a 10, people abusing initially 2 and 0, this might not be statistically significant because of the numbers, but it shows that there was some benefit in terms of the interventions that were being done at the clinic, which means there needs to be more surveys, even as the numbers go up with time, so that we can really evaluate the effectiveness of the interventions that we are giving. Apart from that, the ones that showed significance in terms of effectiveness included oral benzodiazepine, where initially there were 21 abusers, and currently by the time we were conducting the study, there were only 4 of which were continuing with oral benzodiazepine use. Then cannabis smoking, 54 had reported initially. The current was 39. So that was also a significant effectiveness in terms of the interventions that were being given. The other one was heroin injection, where initially there were 18, and then this reduced to 6. Then the smoking of heroin, initially 54, which then had reduced to 12. So this shows that there was some effectiveness in terms of the intervention, though more needs to be done so that this can be evaluated well even in the future, so that for sure with higher numbers, we can be able to know whether the interventions are producing results or not. Next slide, please. So these were the factors which were facilitating regular use by the abusers. So we were just asking questions and asking them to say whether they agree or disagree or strongly agree in that manner. So when the participants were asked about factors that were influencing their regular use, the reasons for regular abuse of the substances that they abused, the key ones that came out as strong influencers were experiencing of withdrawal symptoms. So that was facilitating their continued use of these drugs. The role models, peer pressure, low self-esteem, and then the environment. So these ones have been highlighted. So those ones are key areas that need to be looked at in terms of stopping regular use of substances that are misused or abused. Next slide. Then we looked at the factors that influenced the initiation of patients into substance abuse. So again, the key factors were the role models and peer pressure. So role models and peer pressure were noted as key. And remember, it is the younger age group that were being initiated more from the demographics that we saw initially. So probably most of the young people are being influenced to initiate substance abuse very early in life due to their role models and also peer pressure and the continued use due to other factors. Next slide. So in conclusion, peer pressure, role models, and the environment appear to trigger substance abuse in the study area. So this triggers substance abuse. And then the youthful male members of the society drawn from the informal settlement in the area are vulnerable to substance abuse. So this is also a group that in terms of formulating programs, it should center around this group so that they are assisted. Clinic-based intervention measures appear to have some impact in mitigating the abuse of benzodiazepines, cannabis sativa, and heroin. So future interventions on substance abuse should consider integrating these measures to manage the effects of substance abuse. So that is in conclusion. Next slide. Next slide. So these were the references, some of the references that we used as we were undertaking the study. Next slide. So that was the study. I want to thank you for giving us opportunity to take part in this scientific discourse and hope that as pharmacists, this is an area that we can intervene and we can look into. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mary Atieno. Very, very informative study. And you are bringing us again to the realization that there's a lot of gaps where pharmacy can play a huge role, especially in this opioid abuse and similar areas. So thank you once again for the work, the great work you've done. Very, very informative. And yes, thank you. Just a reminder to, sorry, thank you. Just a reminder to all the presenters, kindly go to the Q&A section to address any questions that may have been presented to you. And to the participants, if you have any questions, kindly put them in the Q&A section and they'll be addressed accordingly. Also, do not forget to go to the PPP portal so that you can subscribe for your CPD points. Thank you. We are now going to go into a panel discussion. The panel is going to be on the future of pharmacy, young pharmacists' response to COVID-19. So I'd like to take the opportunity to introduce the moderator for the panel, Dr. Michael Onyango. So Dr. Michael Onyango is a pharmacist intern and technical pharmacist for MedSource Group Limited, a GPO involved in streamlining the pharmaceutical supply chain. He's also a managing partner of Rai Culture Limited, a pharmaceutical consulting company. Dr. Michael Onyango, I'd like to hand the floor over to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Catherine. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm quite excited to be moderating this session. I want to thank you for holding it well so far, and I also want to thank you for being a wonderful preceptor while I was doing my internship at Mbagathi Hospital.
Karibu.
Okay, so maybe we move to the next slide. Okay, so today we are having a very wonderful panel, a panel of young pharmacists out here who perfectly represent the future of pharmacy. And we are going to talk about how, as young pharmacists, we played a role in trying to respond to this COVID pandemic and give a spotlight to what we as young pharmacists are doing to ensure that we have a better profession in the future. So just to introduce my panelists, we have Kelly Wanyonyi. Kelly is a final year pharmacy student at Kabarak University. She also served as a member of the students' body. She's also been part of the Reculture COVID-19 Research Task Force for the last 6 months. And Kelly is passionate about improving access to health, information, and quality healthcare services. She believes that through continuous learning, active and conscious personal development, we will not only be a better people, but also better healthcare providers. And my other panelist is Dr. Esther Anyango. She's well known to most of you guys. She was a moderator in a previous session yesterday. Dr. Esther is a pharmacist intern, and she's also volunteering at PSK and taking other roles, among them being in the COVID-19 case management, infection and prevention control committee. She's also an intern at FIP, and Dr. Esther is passionate about clinical pharmacy and research. Okay, so as I said, today, being the moderator of this session and my panelists, we represent a group of very young pharmacists. Dr. Esther and I are just getting into the profession. Kelly is still a student. So we perfectly represent the future of pharmacy. And if you belong to the political circles, as I do, we like to say that the future is luminous. And I hope by the end of this discussion, you will all agree with me that the future is indeed luminous. So I'll just like to invite my panelists just to greet the audience before we start. So I'll start with Dr. Esther.
Hi everyone, my name is Anyango Esther, and thank you so much, Dr. Michael, for that introduction. It's really good to be here, and I really hope that we will have a fruitful discussion. Again, I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. Kelly?
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kelly Wanyonyi. I'm a final year student. Thank you, Dr. Michael, for introducing me, and thank you for this opportunity to air our views and interact. I hope it will be fruitful, and I look forward to more. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So just to save on time, I think we'll go straight into our discussions today. And our overriding title for this session was how we as young pharmacists responded to COVID-19. You'll all agree with me that COVID-19 was a big disruptor this year, starting from late last year, and it disrupted a lot, beginning from world markets. It stalled global trade, and the largest shock was on the healthcare system. And when it hit, we all had this responsibility or urgency as professionals to try and be part of the solution, to try and curb this pandemic. And the society also was putting expectations on our shoulders. So we all played different roles. For us who were in practice at that time, we came in, we swung into action quickly and did what we could do. As young pharmacists, we found ways of contributing to the efforts by all the members of the profession. And so I'll go to Dr. Esther, and Dr. Esther, in just a few minutes, like about 5 minutes, could you tell us, give us your story when COVID-19 kicked in? How did you swing into action? What did you do to try and contribute to curbing this pandemic when it hit the country?
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Michael. So when COVID-19 happened, it found me doing my hospital internship. I was in Eldoret, so I was working then at the Moi Teaching and Referral Hospital. And being in Eldoret, I know the virus really hit Nairobi for a while, really hit hard in Nairobi for a really long time, where than it's like before it got to Eldoret. And I was a little worried since Nairobi is home, and I was just wondering what people are doing and how people are managing, when there's a pandemic and there's something new that's ravaging the entire community and you're in the healthcare profession. I felt a need to want to know what me as a professional, what me as a pharmacist can contribute to the entire pandemic. And so having limited experience in the profession and not knowing what to do, I started to talk to people, to more experienced doctors around me, just asking them how they were managing the COVID-19 patients. And through my questions and through my wanting to know what's going on in the profession, I got incorporated into the PSK COVID-19 task force. So I was incorporated in the case management and infection prevention and control subcommittee, whose mandate was basically to come up with a guidance document for pharmaceutical care for COVID-19 patients. And we also we were also tasked with sensitizing not only the public but our fellow healthcare professionals on medication use for COVID-19 patients. And also we were not to work in isolation but to work in conjunction, or rather to amplify responses from other healthcare sectors and the government in general. And this was a very interesting experience for me because I joined in as an intern, and the committee members who I joined with were highly advanced pharmacists, people who had specialized in clinical pharmacy and even gone further to specialize in, critical care. And so to a small extent, I felt like an imposter, not knowing my way around the profession, but it was really, really good because I got to learn how to come up with a guidance document for medication. And seeing as this was something that is very, very new, the document that we had, the recommendations that we were making in our document really needed to be critically appraised, just so that they were sound, they were balanced, and they were relevant and in line with the entire general, like the global view on recommendations and medication use for COVID-19. So that's one way I responded. my capacity as a member of the case management and infection prevention control. So my work basically initially was as an admin. So I'd have to arrange for meetings. I'd have to compile the evidences that we were receiving from certified sources, and drafting the document and making sure that we are not giving out wrong information. And then in my other capacity as an intern at the International Pharmaceutical Federation, I was working under the FIPWISE initiative, basically, which is the Women in Science and Education initiative, which basically supports women who are in pharmaceutical sciences, who are in research, and who are in academia. And what I got to learn from this is that when a pandemic happens, it really affects, pandemics are gender blind, but they're not gender neutral. And so the different genders, male and female, are affected differently. And so this was a very interesting thing to learn. And so we were advocating, and I was part of arranging or rather coming up with articles and webinars, and coming up with recommendations, guidelines on how people who are in positions of leadership and employers really need to take into account how pandemics affect their employees. And so our work was just to support women in pharmaceutical sciences, women in research, women in academia and education, to not only do their caregiving roles at home, now that there was total lockdown and children were at home, to not only do that work, but also to be productive in their areas of work. And then we were also empowering pharmacists to be involved in the response to pandemics, because we play a very critical role, and especially those pharmacists who are in the community, because now patients were not going to the hospital. Their really first contact was in the community. And so the pharmacists who work in the community, number one, were exposing themselves to a lot of harm and danger. And so they really needed to be empowered and to be given skills and measures, just so that they are in and of themselves protected, but they still serve the community, because now the community pharmacist became very pivotal in the response to a pandemic. And then we also worked to empower pharmacists on their role to the community. And so how do we pharmacists raise our awareness about the community around us? And in this respect, I'm talking about how we can empower the community, so that the pharmacy response to a pandemic is enhanced. And so just taking into account how we can do global partnerships to ensure that the caregivers roles, how do I put this, to ensure that services like reproductive health services, family planning services just continue seamlessly, services that have to do with non-communicable diseases, all those services that were hampered by pandemic. How do we pharmacists come in and have global partnerships to ensure that these services are not affected, and the community around us cannot suffer, even in a pandemic? And so I'd like to really highlight those two ways, and that's how I personally responded to the pandemic in my capacity as an intern in Kenya, and a member of the Case Management and Infection Prevention Control Committee, and also in my capacity as an intern under the International Pharmaceutical Federation. So thank you, Michael. I'd like to leave it at that. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Dr. Esther. And that was quite a lot, and I'm so glad you're quite engaged, and especially in trying to empower pharmacists to put out their role clearly out there, so that we are not misunderstood by the community, but rather they understand us, that we are part and parcel of the critical healthcare team. So I'll move to Kerry and to Kelly. And Kelly, in similar fashion, would you give us your story?
Thank you again, Michael. So when COVID-19 hit us, of course, a lot of systems were disrupted. Schools were closed, and I had to relocate back home with nothing to do. Just we are not reading just about the season for planting. And while looking for something to occupy myself with, I came across a call from Culture to have an operational research task force. And I applied for it, and luckily I got in. Initially, my objectives were a bit shallow, just to do research, to know what's going on with COVID-19, what are the responses people are having towards it. But as time has gone by, I have to say, I have learned much more. So the objective of the task force was to provide a platform where we can contextualize and provide objectives while focus on specific areas in pharmacy practice, like infection prevention and control, clinical case management, parallel operational services that are being provided. Then we compile materials and come up with a paper and publish these papers. So I can say in the course of being in this task force, I have learned how to, research. I have learned how to compile information. I have learned how to put out information such that the main objectives have been put across, have been addressed. I've also learned how to publish. In the process, I have learned the various systems in pharmacy. I have learned about regulatory affairs, policy making, management of patients, how I can be a better pharmacist when I eventually finish school. I have also learned various soft skills in the process of being in the task force. I have learned networking. I have learned how to communicate, how to present. I can say through it I have found my purpose, and I think it has been an enlightening process for me. Apart from doing this COVID-19 based research, I have also been involved in helping the community around, because we have been affected economically, and many people are not able to, even put food on their tables. So in my own way, I have been able to provide for members in my community. And yeah, I think that's all I have to say. Back to you, Michael.
Thank you so much, Kelly. And I'm glad you're part of the task force, the research task force that I was also part of. And there were a lot of learnings in that space. And I hope that the papers that you guys came up with will continue informing the research space. And as young pharmacists, we'll encourage others to join us into that space so that we are also actively involved in active research. And so to my next question, and this is to you, Dr. Esther. You are involved in the PSK COVID-19 task force, and the FIP, you're also doing some work with FIP. In the process, as you are doing capacity building and trying to give a solution out there to COVID-19, there are things that you learned in the process in relation to improving practice. So would you share anything you have for us in that space?
Yes, I think I learned quite a lot. I like to tell people that I know this year has been really tough for so many people, but I think for me it's been a very important learning experience, and something that will really influence my future professional life. So the major thing, and I think the major challenge that I faced in the task force committee, is the inadequacy of high quality research that was coming from Kenya and even Africa in general. it was always a point of concern that the recommendations that we were putting down on paper were from elsewhere. And I think I would have loved, and it's my prayer and my vision, that we as a country and we as a country and we as a continent can delve even deeper into clinical research and high quality research that is not only recognized in Africa in general, but also around the world. As we went along, I was really happy that very many hospitals, including Coast General Hospital, including Kenyatta University, Aga Khan University Hospital, were conducting clinical trials on effectiveness of various medications. And I think going forward, I think this is something that we as pharmacists really need to look into. And today has been a very insightful day, because I've learned that there are so many people who are interested in research, and the abstracts that have been presented have been very informative. And so I think the first thing that I really learned was that there's a need for us to really revamp and to invest a lot in our clinical research, because I think we owe that to our population, to come up with recommendations that are not only suitable for them, but are recognized all around the world. The second thing that I learned in my involvement in this COVID-19 response is that our response to pandemics really needs to be one that cuts across. Like, all stakeholders really need to be involved when we respond to pandemics. And in this way, I mean that when something hits, in the future, God forbid, we face another pandemic, it's important for us to come together and put our minds together, just so that we are not responding just like pharmacy profession only, but then let's involve all stakeholders that represent all groups, around the country, for us to have a more targeted response. And then the third thing that I learned is that there's a need for advocacy, there's a need for policy alignment on what we as pharmacists, the role of a pharmacist, not only in the healthcare profession, but also in a pandemic. We are custodians of medications, and I think it really needs to come out very clearly that that is our role, and just so that we own that role and that it's recognized in the entire country. So if I was to just bring down the lessons that I have learned, I'd say those are the three major things I have learned. So the need for research, the need for partnership, whether it's national partnership, and just so that our responses are targeted very well, and the need for advocacy and policy alignment on the role of a pharmacist in a pandemic, and the fact that we do own the medications that we recommend to everybody around, whether it's in like general therapy or even in pandemics where we do not have the treatment that is certified for a particular disease. So yes, thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Esther. And because we are still in the pandemic, it's still not yet done. How do you think as a profession we are doing so far, Dr. Esther?
I think to be quite honest, I think we are doing well. I have been in school, because this is my first year out of school. I officially finished classes last year in September 2019. So it's been a year since I finished school, and I have not been very involved, in PSK conferences and scientific symposium. But I think what I have been exposed to, especially this 40th scientific symposium, really has opened up my mind that people are actually doing something. I have totally loved the presentations that have been made and the discussions that are being done all over. And I think we are really trying. Of course, the sky is the limit. I mean, there's always room for improvement, but I think many pharmacists are going into research, clinical research and clinical trials. And so if you asked me, I think we are doing well. And just the young pharmacists really need to come in knowing that the older pharmacists are doing something about it, and we all just need to come together to ensure that, you know, we can set up labs, research labs that are certified, you know, all over the world, and just like really do high quality research that will benefit the population. So in a nutshell, I think we're doing well, but of course we can do better, and I'd really want to be part of the team that does a better job. So yeah.
Okay, thank you, Doc. And something that is coming out quite clearly, what you are saying is active research. And I would like to turn over to Kelly. And she is in school, and they were disrupted they had to go back home, and their study was partly affected, but some of them resumed online classes. And so to Kelly, just in this period, being engaged in the research task force and how your learnings were disrupted in school, are there any lessons that you came out with that would improve training and also improve involvement of students into research?
Thank you again, Michael. So in the process of being involved in the research task force, I have realized that I've been a bit ignorant about some aspects of pharmacy, particularly research, and getting exposed to, getting the opportunity through the culture to be involved in research has actually been eye-opening for me. I have realized that I enjoy doing research, I enjoy providing solutions, and I would be glad to get involved in such opportunities. Many learners in the course of studies concentrate more on books, more on pharmacology and pharmaceutical chemistry, and forget the developing themselves professionally. And I think when they get opportunities to grow professionally outside class, it will make them better professionals, like through CMEs, through trainings that are organized by senior pharmacists. We can have sessions where the learners are being mentored by the senior pharmacists, people who have experience, you know, so that we are sharpening our skills both in class and out of class, so that when we get there, we can integrate the two aspects of our career. And then I've also learned that there's so many opportunities in pharmacy. Very diverse, and the more you get involved, the clearer your path is set, the more aware you are of what exactly you want to do. And this is something that most students ignore. And if we have students in the forum, I will tell them to get involved, you know, put your hands on one or two things. If you find an opportunity, grab it, get involved. If it is your cup of tea, then continue drinking that cup of tea, and grow, improve yourself, interact with people through the process. I think that's about all that I've learned.
Okay, thank you so much. And just to quickly give a spotlight on the lessons that you both have come out with in this season is one that is key is the inadequacy of high quality research. And we hope moving forward, and from the talks that we've had during this conference and from the presentations that we've had, we see that it's key to have research as an essential part of our practice as pharmacists. And this will put us out there and ensure that we are playing a crucial role in healthcare research and healthcare provision. And so moving forward from these lessons that we've learned, we represent the future of pharmacy. And I'm glad that even in this conference, we've had many young pharmacists coming out and growing to be very aggressive and taking up opportunities. So in our next segment, because we represent the future of pharmacy, and I was told by somebody that pharmacists are the most underutilized resources in the healthcare space. But we need to change this narrative. We need to change the impression that the society has that pharmacy is sort of a commercial or a business-like service, but it's not an essential healthcare provision service. And if you looked at this period of COVID-19, if you are in the healthcare, some of the healthcare facilities, pharmacists were overlooked. They were not really actively involved in the trainings regarding response to COVID-19. So in about, because time is far spent, Dr. Esther, in about 5 minutes, would you talk to us about to us, the young pharmacists, looking towards the future? What should we do to ensure that we are actively taking up the available opportunities, that we are constantly innovating and bringing up new ideas into the pharmacy space?
Thank you so much, Mike. And I think that's a very important question. When I talked earlier this year, I remember I gave a phone call to Dr. Nyalita, and she only had one advice to tell me, and she said that young pharmacists really just need to engage, and engage. It's only when you get involved, just like Kelly said, it's only when you get involved will you be able to know what pharmacists around you are doing, what the market looks like, the dynamics of the market, and where you really can plug in. And so I think I've really encountered very young pharmacists who are discouraged, who think there are no jobs out here, who think the older pharmacists have neglected them. But sometimes it's just because they don't expose themselves to these professionals. They don't take themselves out there for them to realize that, oh my goodness, there are so many pharmacists who are doing remarkable things, and I could actually be part of that, the entire system that's doing remarkable things. And so for young pharmacists, I think it's important for you to engage, to really believe in your profession, and to know what you offer as a pharmacist. And just taking us back to the breakout session we had yesterday, Dr. Konje said that sometimes it's the unawareness of our abilities and what we can do and the value we can provide to the healthcare. Sometimes it's the unawareness that really puts us back. And so it's important to really just be in that space where you know your role, you know you are smart, and you know that you are a custodian of medicine. And really every single thing that is medicine related really needs to be at the tip of your fingers for you to be relevant in a healthcare profession. And so number one, engage. Number two, increase awareness. Be aware of who you are and what you need to do as a profession. And the third thing is just that to know that everything we do, whether it's regulatory, clinical care, pharmacovigilance, every single thing we do as pharmacists needs to have the patient at the center. And I will take that from what Dr. Panga said yesterday, that the patient is always at the center of everything we do, and everything about the pharmacy profession. Those are the three important things I have learned in my journey this year. Not everything has been figured out, but I think those three things has really helped me to have a positive mindset of what I need to do and where I am going as a professional and what the future portends for me. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Esther. And to Kelly. Kelly, you're still in school. I'll just like you to talk to fellow students who are still in school. because you're already engaging, you're already in these platforms. Would you quickly share something with those who are who have joined us today, who are in the audience? Would you quickly share with them something on how to engage, how to interact with mentors in such platforms, so that they are also able to do what you're doing, to know or to learn what you've learned over this period?
Sure, Dr. Michael. I'll just echo what Dr. Esther has said. Get engaged, seek opportunities. Don't be afraid to ask for a chance to participate. Don't be afraid to ask for a chance to learn. If you can volunteer, then go ahead and volunteer. If you can attend a training, then go ahead and attend a training. If you can host a webinar, then go ahead and host a webinar, because through these opportunities, it will be easier for you to make decisions. It will be easier for you to build your confidence. It will also be a learning experience for you. You will sharpen your skills. You know what you're good at and what you're not good at. You know who to approach when you have a specific problem. You know who to approach when you have an innovative idea. You know who to approach when you want to get involved in specific things that are to do with pharmacy practice. I'll also advise them to stay informed. Most of the time you get that youths are ignorant about information, probably because they're still not in the profession, but because they are too focused on schoolwork and other things. But I'll tell them to stay informed on matters to do with pharmacy, so that when information comes out, if there's a bill that is being passed, if there's a discussion that is being done among the senior pharmacists, be aware, keep updating your knowledge, keep reading books, and it's an added advantage for you. And also the third thing I'd advise them is to create solid networks. One thing for sure, most of the things that I have been involved in are through my friends who are in the profession, whether we are in the same school or in other schools. I'd only come across the posters to be involved in a certain event, or a friend of mine would call me to ask me if I want to be involved in certain activities. It's through these networks that you'll know what is going on. It is through these networks that you will get involved. It is through these networks that you'll get engaged. Also, you never know. It is through these networks that will form the future big pharma industry, big pharma companies, and come up with better ways to make our systems more solid and functional in better ways. Yeah, so I think that's the advice I'll give the young people who have joined us today.
And just to add, I think at this point, I'd really like to thank the older generation who are really embracing the young pharmacists who have energy and who really don't know what they want to do, but who are very kind enough, to guide us onto this path. Because I think I've had so many opportunities just because of the older people who are more experienced than me, who saw me get into a committee and who are very respectful and would listen to you, even though you really don't, I thought I didn't have a lot to say. So I'd really like to thank the older generation. And also, even going forward, I mean, like with PSK, if they can provide opportunities, even if in future committees or brainstorming events, they can have a slot, for young pharmacists to be involved in these initiatives, just so that there's a place where we can plug in those who have initiative and those who'd like to be involved. They'd really need an avenue so that they can be involved. And so I think it's important for PSK to just have always an opportunity, an avenue to pull up young pharmacists who really want to be involved, because I think there's so many of us who really want to be involved and are just lacking the opportunity and the information that they may plug into the profession. But thank you so much, all of you guys. Yeah.
Thank you so much. And I'll just reiterate what you guys have said. And one key thing is to encourage the young pharmacists is to engage and engage and engage. Seek mentorship out there. The older pharmacists, the senior pharmacists, they are ready to mentor us. And some of us who've been mentored, we can attest to this, as Esther just said. And we are putting a call out there that seek mentorship, and without seeking, you won't find it. You have to put yourself out there. You have to engage and engage. And also we have to stay informed. Information is power. Dig in. And during this period, most of the young pharmacists who are involved in doing research in relation to COVID-19, we were basically seeking information out there. We were learning in the process. So mine is to encourage the young pharmacists that please engage, interact with our seniors. They have a lot to pass down to us. And quickly moving, because we're still talking about the future, and I think we should be done in about 5 minutes. Before our panelists will give their parting shots, I would like to put a thought out there. And Albert Einstein once said that his happiest thought is imagining a man falling from a roof. So now, before we label him a sadist, let us learn why such thoughts filled him with glee. He said that a man falling from the roof is weightless. He experiences no forces on him, and therefore is absolutely free, just like a man wading in space. So in a way, our current situation as young pharmacists, we are like that man falling from a roof. After internship, we are currently not being posted by the government. So and this now gives us freedom to venture into several fields, expand the reach of pharmacy. But at the same time, we have limited time to find a sector to join, or just like the man I've related to the man falling from the roof. If we don't take advantage of this short time, and if we don't expand into newer areas, then we will surely hit the ground. So back to our panelists. I've just put that out there. So please, I will give you parting shots and relate it to what we should do to ensure that our profession survives in the future, and as individuals, we also survive in the future. So over to you, Kelly.
Thank you, David. Thank you, Michael. So I think I'd say we cannot put the burden on our senior pharmacists to build the future for us. It's up to us, the youth, to build ourselves, to empower ourselves in preparation for the great task that we have ahead of us. So I'll say it is upon us, the youth, to grab the opportunities that have been given to us, to use the platforms that we have been given as stepping stones to greater things that we have in future. And I think our futures will work out well. We are young and we are resilient, and we have a lot of energy. We are very energetic. We have leverage within us, and it's up to us to explore it and utilize it. So I would really encourage the youth to build themselves up, use the senior pharmacists as our mentors and our idols, and see where they are, and project our future in the same lane. Thank you.
Over to you.
I think what I'd say, just to add on to what Kelly has said, is expose yourself to the possibilities of the pharmacy profession. With everything changing and the market dynamics changing, it's important to keep abreast on what's going on around the world, and and that will open up your mind, because as you said, information is power. And then we also just need to be mindful of the fact that we all start from somewhere. You may have to start at a lower place, but then we start from somewhere, yeah. And just that humility and the lack of, like, bringing down the self-importance really needs to come up, and to just know that we all start from somewhere. But even as you start from somewhere, it's in the little things that you do. So whatever your hand finds to do, just do it really, really, really well, because it's just those little things that we do as young pharmacists. It's just those little things that matter. And so when you're called to do a presentation or you're called to help out, just do it with all your heart, and this will serve you, will serve your future very well. So thank you so much, Dr. Michael.
Thank you so much. I wish we had more time, but unfortunately our time is spent. And thank you so much for bringing these points out. And I hope to the young pharmacists who are here, I hope you've learned something, you have the message, and I hope it sinks in. And what has been mentioned quite clearly and has been repeated is the fact that we really need to be aggressive as young people, and we need to engage, and we need to seek information. So as we move forward and as we engage in other forums, I would like young pharmacists to join us wherever we are, to be active in such platforms, so that we drive the profession, we drive ourselves as individuals to ensure that our profession survives and it gets better with time. So I'll like to conclude at that point and hand it back over to Dr. Catherine.
Thank you so much, Dr. Michael Onyango, and the fellow panelists, Dr. Esther and Dr. Kelly. That was a very engaging conversation. And it's really good to see that young pharmacists are making an impact and plugging in various sectors. I'll just reiterate the same things that you've all said, that it's important to engage and also increase awareness amongst yourselves. And always remember to put the patient at the center of anything that you're doing as a pharmacist. And just as a word of encouragement to all the young pharmacists, if you feel discouraged, look for a senior pharmacist to help mentor you. And also within amongst yourselves, you could also network and just help each other out. And finally, your future is very bright in the field of pharmacy. Thank you. Thank you, Mike, once again.
Thank you.
So now we have reached the end of our sessions for the day. And just a few take-home messages from me from what I have picked during the session, today's session, are that as pharmacists, we really need to raise the profile of our Kenyan pharmacists, and both regionally and globally. And also pharmacists have a critical role to play in improving the financial capacity in our public health facilities, as this will translate to improved health service delivery. Very, very important. And also conversations around herbal medicines use are important and cannot be ignored. Then it's also important that we note that there are a lot of unexplored areas in the field of pharmacy. Having listened to the presentation of Dr. Mitch, it's just a realization that there's a lot of things a pharmacist can do. Yeah, and finally, pharmacists are also very important in commodity security practices, not just in the midst of COVID-19, but generally in everything else that we do. So I'd like to urge you all to, if you've not claimed your CPD points, kindly go to the PPP portal and claim your CPD points. And also, I hope that day 3 of the virtual conference was very informative for you. And to our sponsors, thank you very much for making this day a success for us. Thank you all participants for your engagement and active participation. God bless you all. Have a good day and afternoon. Thank you.
Hello everyone, I'm Eric and I'll quickly take you through the process of subscribing to a CPD event, claiming CPD tokens, and I'll also address the challenges you're likely to encounter in the process. When you log into your PPB portal, you'll find different icons, but the ones that are most important to CPD are the ones called CPD, the one of claim tokens, and the one of self-reporting. How do you subscribe to a CPD event? When we say make sure you subscribe, we mean you visit your portal, come to this CPD icon, which leads to all the events that are upcoming. And how do you subscribe? I've already subscribed to all the days of the conference, so I'll demonstrate with this event provided by KNH, and I'll click subscribe, then subscribe to event. It will tell me you've already subscribed to this event. Follow up with the provider. Whenever you are subscribing, you want to avoid clicking subscribe in quick succession on different events, because then it is only the first event that will be captured. The rest will say already subscribed, yet they have not been subscribed to. You can confirm if your subscription is successful by the change of color. The color changes. For example, this event has changed from the black button to a gray button that tells already subscribed. You can as well come back to claim tokens, where you'll find all the events that you've subscribed to. Refresh that page, you'll see whether the subscription was successful or not. It is very important to make sure that your subscription is confirmed, because the token that we send after the event can only be claimed under the events that you subscribed. So once you subscribe and after you attend the event, if it's this conference, you'll receive a token. So we send tokens to all participants. Whenever you receive a token, you'll come under claim tokens to claim it. For example, I'll demonstrate with a token I received for the World Pharmacists Day webinar, which was done in conjunction with PSK. I'll come here to claim token. I'll paste my token here and I will claim points. It will tell me that I've been awarded 1 point. This is the point I've already been awarded. Usually there are some issues that you encounter. It will tell you that that token is invalid or it's expired. It's when you claim the token. Where do you get that? It's when you claim the token under a different event. For example, the same token, if I bring it to another event, it will give me an error. It will say, for example, this one will say the token is invalid or has already expired, because it's a token for a different event. Another issue that members complain is that they say, I cannot find the event under the claim tokens. That means your subscription was not successful. You either clicked in quick succession or you did not confirm whether the subscription was successful or not. It is important to note that subscribing is very important if you are to get the point. Attending an event without subscribing means the token that will send you will not help. It will not be of benefit to you. So it's always important to subscribe to all the events for CPD to work for you. Panelists for the conference will be receiving two points per presentation, the panelists and abstract presenters, and these will be up before the end of the conference. Thank you very much.